Hello everybody, Cody McIntyre here from Boss Poses, and today I have a really fun tutorial for you guys that I spent most of the night last night trying to tinker around and figure out, but I nailed it and I am ready to share it with you all. So today what we're going to be doing is animating 2D sprites from like Marvel versus Capcom in a 3D environment, because I always had this cool idea to have like one of these battles go on with 3D effects and like rocks flying around and stuff like that. I thought it would be super cool, and it would be fun to give people that skill as well, just to boost things into the future. It never hurts to touch that fourth wall, right? So what we're going to be doing today is not only just importing the GIF into Blender, which is as easy as it sounds. You just enable images planes, and then you import that right away, and then it just comes in and it looks like that. But the trick that we're going to be doing today is learning how to chain these into a sequence. So if you notice, I have an idle state, then he goes into a walking state, and then it goes back into the idle state. You could have attacks, like I said, physics in the background, full HDRIs like I have here. And we're going to cover everything in this video today in about 20 minutes. So you're going to be masters of this in no time. So if you like the idea of this video, or if you're going to like it in the future, just drop a like on it. Drop a comment if you plan on, or if you want to learn anything. I'm a jack of all trades and I love to help you guys. But anyway, let us get started animating the Wolverine. Alright, now that we are inside of Blender, the first thing you want to make sure you do is go on to Google and get yourself some GIF images. That's all you're going to have to type. So just type in like Marvel versus Capcom GIF images and download a couple of them. Just right click, save as, and save it to a folder or something like that. I don't recommend Giphy because it does save as a WebM, and you do need it to be a GIF for it to have its transparent alpha inside of Blender. Which I believe only works after Blender 3.5. I remember trying on 3.5, I just couldn't get it unless you had to do something in the shading. But any version after that should just automatically go about. So what you're going to do is, first of all, just start with a new project as we have here. We're just going to add in a plane so that we have a ground for our Wolverine to stand on, and we're going to show you how to do all the keyframing and stuff like that. It's going to come very shortly. So what we're going to do is get another add-on I want you to install as well. Actually, you're going to have to install two add-ons. One is already inside of Blender. You just have to enable it. It's called Image as Planes. So make sure you go into your preferences, add-ons, and then type in the search, type Image as Planes, and you should see the import option for that. Enable it, and then when you come back inside of the add up here in object mode, you're going to have your image as planes here. And another add-on which we talked about in some previous tutorials was Blender Kit right here, as you see. And this has a bunch of material scenes, HDRs, and brushes, and as you see, you get a whole bunch of cool stuff. There is a subscription, but we are on the free plan right now for the sake of the tutorial, just to show you that we can pull this off with all the stuff that's available right now. Okay, so you're going to have categories right here with bricks and stuff like that. So we're just going to find a ground for our plane. So if anybody is new here, to change over into your basic rendered mode and your cycles rendered mode, so you can change that over in the options. And you can change it up here with these three shading buttons up here. So we're just going to turn on our first viewport shader. We're going to find a good stone brick to use for our floor. So I'm just going to choose this one right here. All you have to do is make sure your object is selected, and then you're just going to double click or single click that object. If your stones are not like in sync and they're like a little bit stretched out, what you can do is go into UV editing. You want to press A, and then you want to shrink this down till it's about the size of those stones. And then when you come back, you'll notice that you have your texture rescaled onto here. And if we go over into cycles mode, you'll notice that we do have a height map on that texture. So that's great. We're already ready to start importing our GIF images. We're just going to make sure that shading mode is on, just to conserve space and RAM. We're going to go now to Image as Planes, and we're going to go to where you saved your Wolverine or whatever character it may be's GIF. We're going to bring this up. And we're going to do a couple things right here. So if you notice right here, if I go into my timeline, which you can just drag up, you'll notice that this isn't looped. And when we do play it, it's really fast. So we can fix that very easily. So the first thing you want to make sure you do, click your Wolverine, come up to shading, just zoom in on this. It'll already be here for you. Click cyclic. So now when you go back into your layout mode and then you play it back, you'll notice that it's playing in a cycle. So basically a loop. That's what that option does for you. And if you notice that it's playing a little bit too fast, that's because most 2D animation is done in about 16 to 17 frames. So we're going to go ahead and change that. So what I want you guys to do is come to your output over here in your prefences. Come down to where it says frames. I want you to change your frame rate to custom. That way it gives you this option to set your own custom frame rate. We're just going to set this to default 17. Right now when we play back, you'll notice that our Wolverine is more in sync. So that's great, right? So now we're pretty much good to go for importing the other GIF sequences that we have here. So just to start, we're going to go with one. We're going to go back into our image as planes. We're going to import another one. And we're going to get our walk sequence now for our Wolverine. So this is what I meant by make sure you do this first. That way you can line up these two sheets so they're the same height. It's very important that you do that. And if I double click again, it should select the one in the background, which seems to be good. Okay. For this one as well, you also want to go into your shading and make sure that's cyclic as well. So we're going to go ahead and make sure we click it. Click cyclic. And now they're both running in sequence. So now they're both running continuously, okay? So now we're pretty much good to go for animating. You can also change which frames these start, so I'll show you that very quickly. You can change that from start frame in case you don't want this clip to play until, say, start frame number 1. So if I zoom out and I move this out of the way, you can see that starts on frame 1. If I change it to 17, it'll start playing on 17. So that's always fun to know and good and handy. But what we're going to do is a little feature that I figured out last night when I was browsing around trying to figure out how to keyframe the visibility, right? So this is going to be the ultimate tool for you guys. If you notice right here by the camera in the eye, we do not have this monitor symbol, okay? Right above this, you have a filters option. I want you to go ahead and click that. Under restriction toggles, I want you to click this. Disable in viewports, globally disable in viewports. We're going to enable that. And if you notice, now we have this monitor next to all of our titles right here, okay? So what we're going to do is we want this walk animation to be hidden first. So we're going to select this walk animation. We're going to come and bring this to frame 1. Okay, because we want this to be hidden on frame 1, right? So what we're going to do is click this monitor so it disables it. Then we're going to right click and insert keyframe, okay? So we're going to choose an end frame for our first animation so we can bring in our walk sequence. So we got our walk sequence here. So what I want you guys to do is the same thing for this one. So you can just click that. Except this time we're not going to turn it off. We're just going to right click it and insert sequence, right? So one's off with a keyframe and one is on with a keyframe. So we're going to choose a good time to when we want to switch and start walking. So I'm thinking about 29 to 30 seconds. So I got 30 seconds set here. I want to turn this first animation off, which is the one we have selected. We're going to click the monitor, right click, insert keyframe. So anything before 20 or anything before 30, sorry, is going to turn on the animation, right? And then anything after is going to turn it off. And then we can bring that back in later. So on frame 30, now when this one is gone, we're going to come up to the one that we have turned off, right? So it's always good to relabel these, but that should be the green one right here, okay? So the thing we're going to do is we're going to click it, and then we're going to right click, insert keyframe. So now as you see, we have our idle animation, and then it goes into our walk animation. There is tweening and blending options you can do, but I'm going to save that for a more advanced tutorial for you guys in the future. It's just fun to learn this right now, but now we're good to go to start keyframing our walk animation. So right on 30, you want to click that Wolverine, okay? You want to turn on your auto keyframe button, which is right here. So auto keying. And then what we're going to do is just nudge him a little bit. And then return him back to the space. And that just adds a position keyframe for that animation. So what I'm going to try to do is, I can never remember which key it is to get this thing. Alright, so we screw that. Forget it. Okay, anyway, so we have her walked right there. So, right? I'm going to bring it back. And as you see, this one's on the ground. And this guy's a little bit high off. We can fix that later, but right on 30 frames is when we're going to start walking, right? So we're going to make sure we select this animation. So we want to make sure that is the one that's selected because that's what we're going to be keyframing. And keep an eye on where the foot is because that's going to lead you to the step, okay? So what we're going to do is just slowly drag this back. So we want to know where their foot was. So right in the center of that block. And we're going to bring that up. So we're just going to push him so that foot's still in the center of the block. Now keep an eye on the front foot. Now every front foot is going to tell you where to put the back foot, okay? So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So right here, the edge of the toe is about right here on the block here. So I'm going to bring this up, and when he steps, that back foot should be right there on the edge of that block. So about right there, okay? Now the front foot's going to be right on the edge of this block. So now when he steps, the back foot should be on the edge of that block. And as you see, we have a walk sequence. Okay, front foot on the front of that block. And then the light blue boot will go on the front. Okay, and we're going to keep doing the same thing. So front of that block, step, back foot, front of that block. Okay, same thing. And we're going to do this one more time before we stop it, because I do have an attack sequence I want to add into here. We should have done that at the beginning with the thing, but I'm going to show you that you can add them in afterwards. So right now, if I go back and I start playing back my keyframes, you'll notice that we have a walking Wolverine, and then when it gets beyond 30, we have an idle Wolverine. Okay, that's fun and all. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is just make sure you turn off your auto keyframe. That way you're not keyframing random shit in your scene. So the next thing we're going to do is create a camera. I think I have a camera already. There's a good feature that you can do inside of your options. Go to navigation, key map, and then in the search thing, you want to type fly, okay? I want you to remap the fly key to anything on your mouse or whatever key you're going to remember, because it is a very powerful key, okay? So if I lose the camera and I don't know where it is, I can press my fly key and go right into the key. And then I can press the fly key again, and then if you notice, I can move it like a first-person shooter, and I can use WASD to move the mouse, or sorry, the camera around. So we can position the camera right here, because we do want to keyframe the camera to move with the Wolverine, right? So what we're going to do is just do that, go back into fly mode, nudge it, and then rotate it a little bit, so it looks like that. And then we have a keyframe for a camera on frame 0. It can be 1 or 0. It doesn't really matter. They're pretty much the same number when it comes to animation. Usually 0 is where you do your editing. But anyway, so what we're going to do is go forward. So about 30. As you see, that front frame's a little bit off. We can fix that later, but we'll just start it from right there. And then what you want to do is create another position keyframe for your camera. So again, just nudge it, or you can right click in here and then hit, or sorry, you want to hit I and then all channels, and then that'll add a keyframe for it. That way your camera isn't constantly blending in with the motion as it's still, because you want the camera to stay still as it's right here. And then we want it to start walking. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So we just push the camera over with our WASD after we press the fly key. And we just keep following the Wolverine forward. And you could do this with as many sequences as you want. You can even take sprite sheets, cut them up, turn them into animations in the sequencer, which I also have a tutorial for. So if you do like the video, drop a comment and where to find it. I'll tag that in the video as well. So we're going to go back now, and if you notice that our camera is moving with the Wolverine, and when it gets to 30, it's going to stop. And we do have a little bit of a camera motion. It's always nice to add very, very fine camera motion so it looks natural on still cameras instead of just blank still tripod. Right, we can end the frame wherever we'd like. We can add our attack sequence in any point of time. So we're just going to move it like this. So I'd like to get about 100 frames. So if you don't want to mess up your camera, so just turn off your auto keyframe again and click the middle mouse, and now you can drag around, and yeah. And as well, you can use your fly mode like this. Snap into the camera and then use fly to control the camera, and then just press the camera mode to move your viewport around. So I can go like this, like WASD. It's a miracle, okay? So I hope that all helps you all. So we're going to go back to where he's not walking anymore. So right here. And again, make sure your frame is on. I'll add another terrain so he is walking, because it's going to be a little bit difficult to tell where he's going. Okay. I'll turn off the auto keyframe. I'll just select my terrain, copy and paste it, and then I'll push another one. I can weld the edges if I want to as well, but I'll just leave it like so for now because that looks fine. So now we're going to click our Wolverine again, make sure we have our auto keyframe on. So again, front foot, if that makes sense. And then as he's pushing that front foot, obviously that's going to go back like that. So we got about 100 frames right here. And another thing, what I can do from this point is turn back on my idle animation. So I'll go to the next frame over here. I'll turn this off, replace keyframe. And now anytime I go beyond that point, he's going to turn off. And at 100, I can add in my attack sequence. So I'd have to just move that attack sequence to there and move it back. But as you see, we have a full thing, and we still have to go back into our camera. So I'm going to do that. And you make sure your camera is selected when you do the auto keyframing. We're going to play it forward. Okay. Off. And then what we can actually do is move our last invisible GIF that we had there. I'm pretty sure we can still control it from not having it being visible. So we do have that keyframe on right there. And then after 101, that's when he's going to turn off. So let me just turn off the auto keyframe. So when you do click this, it doesn't add one. Okay. So he is invisible, remember. So we're going to move this keyframe or this Wolverine frame up. Okay. What we're going to do is re-disable that. So after 101, he's here. And then we're going to re-enable it and insert keyframe. And then he's back into his idle animation. We may have to keyframe that all the way up because I'm not sure if he's going to return to his state. As we see here, we have an error. That's because we didn't keyframe the original position or use a second clip. Like that, right? So we're going to make sure we select when he goes off. We want to make sure we do still add a keyframe for him. So what we're going to do is go and make them visible. That way it can add a frame. And then we're going to just nudge that guy a little bit. Whoop, sorry. Let me just get him selected. Where is it? Right here. Just a little bit of a nudge right there, okay? So the next thing what we're going to do, so after that frame 30, he should vanish. And there will be a keyframe for him there. So I might have to re-click it to see that frame. So now that there's a keyframe there, we can change the position because he's going to be keyframed all the way up until that point. And then while he's invisible, he should be able to travel all the way back into the other sequence. So again, 101. And then 102. And then we can keyframe his position again. Here. And as you see, now we have the Wolverine in an idle state in the very beginning. And then it plays through his walk sequence. And then he's back into his idle state. So we'll just set this to 150 frames so when we do render it out. And this will render out transparent, so I'll just show you very quickly the settings that you would probably need for this. Let me just go to my output. I have this set to MP4 on FFmpeg. Don't cache result. So you want to make sure FFmpeg's on. Containers just Matroska. Video codec H.264 medium quality. Add an MP4. Change that to MPEG-4, and that'll render out this alpha channel as well. MP4 has the alpha channel. Everything else will give you a bit of an issue with doing this, so that's perfectly fine. So now that we have an animation, you can actually start to build your scene. And as you see, that looks really, really cool. I like that a lot. So another thing you can do is come into Blender Kit. So just make sure you turn auto keyframe off now that our animation is finished. You can come in here and you can get some stuff, right? You can get interior, science, space, hobby, all this cool stuff. If you go to search filter, you can go to free first. That's what I was trying to show you guys before, but for some reason it just wasn't showing anything. And as you see, you can just add a bunch of random crap around if you really wanted. You can add effects, other characters, transport, space, nature. So say this was a terrain, right? I could add mountains and trees inside of here, rocks. You can even go up into the search bar and say type stone or rock. You can get nice stones and you can drag them into the scene. Some of these are scanned, so they look really, really nice. And then if we rotate it, you'll notice we have a bit of an environment for our Wolverine in the background. And now if I turn in my cycles mode, you'll notice that everything's rendered really nicely, right? So this looks really cool. And then if I move this forward, it will lag because this is the cycles render. And then he's back into his animation, right? So you guys could have a lot of fun doing this. You could make like Super Smash Bros. Fight scenes in 3D. But another fun thing you can do as well, if you want to give this bit more flair to it, is go into HDRs. We're going to find one of these outdoor HDRs and hit OK. And if you notice, now we have a lighting scene in the background, right? If you wanted to just keep the lights of the background and you didn't want this crap there and you wanted to composite like a fighting ring in the background or something like that, you could very easily come up in here into your render options. You want to come down to film, and then you want to go to transparent. And if you notice that the background is now transparent, but you will have to save that with the RGBA. We'll do that in a more advanced tutorial when we actually do like a fight scene with Spider-Man or something like that. So if you guys are interested in seeing that, again, like and subscribe. But anyway, we're going to turn off the transparent again, and we're just going to give this a good render, just kind of like this, right? Because this is kind of fun. You know, I like this stuff, and I'll include this into the video as well, the final render at the end of the video. So if you're interested to see what this looks like at the end, you'll know, or you can just jump right in and start making your own 2D animations out of sprite sheets, right? So I'll just play this back in real time. So if I press spacebar, and you can change that flicker that we had there. That's because I forgot to put, we can just stretch back one frame from its visibility because it's going invisible one frame too late. That's why you've seen it skip there. But you all have the gist of it now, so I'll let you all practice that for a few little while, couple days, and then we'll come back with a more advanced tutorial. So please do like and subscribe on this video. Comment in the bottom if you'd like to learn anything else, and I hope to see you all soon, and take care of yourselves. Have a good day.